Alex, a very good morning. That was a battering, wasn't it?
Alex, how this morning?
Good morning. It certainly was. And I tell you what, if Erik Ten Hag says Manchester United are on their way up, I'd hate to see them when they're on their way down. I mean, he points to those victories they had before the derby. They laboured to victory they didn't deserve against Brentford. They were poor in beating Sheffield United. And they got away with murder in the first half against Copenhagen. So I'm not sure what games that he's watching, but I don't see that a corner's been turned at all, to be honest.
So what happens here? You know, who's under pressure more? The players, the captain, Bruno, or is the manager under big pressure now?
Crookie, what did you think? Because that following on to that question, it's a similar question, because I saw Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher having a bit of an argument regarding who's to blame. And I think Jamie Carragher makes a good point when he said it's not the owners that are taking free kicks and putting them over the bar and dropping men at set plays and things like that. However, it is common knowledge there are problems at the top.
I think they're probably both right, to be honest. I mean, I'd like to point it out, and I don't think enough's been made of it. Manchester United and England lost an all-time great in Sir Bobby Charlton, and the tributes that have been paid at the last two home games have been exceptional. We haven't heard from the Glazers. There's been no comment attributed to the owners about the passing of Sir Bobby Charlton. They weren't at the derby. I think that probably sums up the contempt for which they hold the club and the supporters in. I think it's really poor. Would it have taken much for a line in the programme from Avram and Joel Glazer or on the website? So I think that says quite a lot. Yeah. However, on the pitch, I think Erik Ten Hag got his team selection wrong. Picking Lindelof at a centre-back at left-back, not picking Varane for such a big game and going with Johnny Evans, who, let's be honest, how many Premier League teams does he get into at this stage of his career? So I think he has to take responsibility. He was booed when he took off Rasmus Højlund and not Marcus Rashford, and I go along with that because Rashford's been in really poor form this season. But you do have to look at the players as well. I take on board Roy Keane's point about Bruno Fernandes and questioning his credentials to be captain. But the obvious answer to that question is if you take the armband away from him, who on earth do you give it to? Because there's a lack of leaders. There's a lack of character in this playing squad. And I think that's a massive issue. So, listen, there's issues in the boardroom. I think Ten Hag has lost his way a little bit in the dugout, and there's clearly issues on the pitch. Apart from that, by the way, it's all going brilliant.
Does he have to play stronger side, Ten Hag, tonight? They go to, I think it's Fulham, isn't it, on Monday they go to?
Well, what is his strong side, Al? Is Marcus Rashford part of his strong side on
form?
He scored one goal.
But he's got to be
this season. Well, I'm not sure. I think if I'm Alejandro Garnacho, who makes an impact every time he comes off the bench, I'd be knocking on Ten Hag's door and saying, what do I need to do to get a starting spot? So I think he's got some big decisions to make.
Well,
he gives you energy.
I'd
say you're right, to a certain degree, Cookie. The one thing he does give you when you see him is energy.
And what he gives Rasmus Højlund is service as well. I feel sorry for Højlund. I thought he did well in difficult circumstances, particularly in the first half of the derby at the weekend. He holds the ball up. He's got a bit of tenacity about him. He strikes me as somebody who knows what it means to wear that red shirt. But he doesn't get any service because on one wing he's got Antony, who, let's be honest, he's been absolutely hopeless since he joined Manchester United. He doesn't get balls into the box. And on the other side, you've got Rashford, who every time he picks up the ball, he just wants to cut in on his right foot, try and get himself into a shooting position. So easy to play against at the moment, Marcus Rashford, because you know what he's going to do. Whereas when Garnacho comes on, at least he wants to take on the fullback. At least he wants to get balls in the box. And actually, Højlund might just get a little bit of service. And I think also it sends a message. Last season, Erik Ten Hag was a brave manager. He wasn't afraid to make the big calls. You remember he dropped Marcus Rashford for that victory at Wolves because he was late for training. I think he's become a little bit scared in the dugout, scared of the big personality, scared to leave people like Rashford or take him off at times. I think he needs to find that again and really make an example of these underperforming players, because United's two best players last season, arguably, were Marcus Rashford and Casemiro. Yeah. They've both been really poor this season.
And Mason's made no impact either, has he? Mason Mount, yet. He's not made any.
No, he hasn't. And I felt a bit sorry for him when he came on because he didn't seem to know what position he was playing in. And obviously it was a signing that was driven by Erik Ten Hag because he kept an eye on Mason Mount since he went out on loan when he was a young player to the Dutch league. So you would imagine that when he signed him, he had a vision in mind. But I've not seen that yet. I was at Old Trafford for the first game of the season against Wolves when he tried to shoehorn Mason Mount into the team. Didn't work at all, totally upset the balance. And they've not really found the balance since then. And that's where you can question the manager. Onana has had a good week. I think he played quite well in the derby and he made that crucial penalty save against Copenhagen. But before that, he'd been quite poor and people were questioning whether that was the right signing. Mason Mount, we haven't seen anything yet from a £60 million player. Obviously, Højlund, despite the fact I think he's played quite well, he's struggling for goals. So you look at the signings that were made this summer, and they haven't made the impact of the signings that Ten Hag recruited last year. And then you get on to Antony, who I sort of defended to Gabby Agbonlahor when he was hammering him at the end of last season, because I felt like the second season he might kick on, but he hasn't. And at the moment, you have to say that looks like a poor signing as well.
Alex, let's see what happens tonight. Thank you very much. Let me ask you this, Sally, before we break. Ten Hag, is he doing a better job than Jose Mourinho done at United?
No, not at all. By the way, remember Jose Mourinho said that winning that
coming second
and finish second might be one of his biggest achievements. See, when you look at it now, we all laughed at the time, didn't say that's typical Jose, but it's maybe not just as daft as we think it is.
TalkSPORT Breakfast with Alan Brazil, Thursday and Friday morning 6 till 10 on AM, on DAB, via the TalkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. TalkSPORT.